Good morning, it's Brian. We are back. It is the art of startup war. And you all know why it's the art of startup war, because whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor, you know that this is a continuous battle to that beautiful, glorious end, which is total victory, and hopefully a unicorn, and hopefully you make the world a better place, and everybody's very happy on the way. And now, I would say, actually, not just now, all the time, timing is absolutely imperative. And I don't think there is a person in the US today who is going to say that this is not the time for clean energy. This is the moment, this is the time, this is when it's happening. Whether you love Joe Biden, whether you hate Joe Biden, if you like clean tech, you love Joe Biden, because this is going to be his legacy. Now, that you have on one side. On the other side, we have an environment which is being led by kings and who rightfully deserve to be there. However, we do not have the infrastructure available today to provide for the promises that have been made for what clean energy have been able to do. And we at Expert Dojo are, without question, the luckiest people on the planet, because we are going to get to invest in a company that bridge that gap. They bridge the gap with what we know has to happen. There is no go back to poisonous fossil fuels, right? But we have to be able to bridge it to something that is feasible. So Tony from CZAR-Power, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, my friend.
Is that a good enough intro? I mean, That's not over intro. What you're doing.
No,
it is what you're doing.
It is. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
So can you take us through the story? Because when I first met you, I was blown away. Like, you know, I was here. Victoria said to me, I got this great guy. I want to talk about clean power. I think it was like 5:30 or 6 in the evening. I'm like, great, I'm going to go. I'm going to play my kid in tennis, because everybody knows I love my kid and we always play tennis and it's great. But we're on the phone and I'm so intrigued with what we're talking about. I'm like, screw tennis. We can do tennis later on. Like this is part of history. This is like, I don't, again, over dramatize this what this is, but I always loved it when they talked about Linda McCartney and she said, you know, I'm living history. I'm right now in the time where the greatest bands of all time are playing, and I'm here and I get to document it. And yeah, other people could have did it, but they didn't do it. Like, I did it. So I feel like I'm in that moment of clean energy, and I feel like there's going to be certain people that are going to break through, and they're going to break through because they have seen this in such a realistic and brilliant way. And I believe that you're one of those people, Tony. And I love what you're building. So can you share with everybody here a little bit why, everything from what the self-sufficient grid is going to look like,
Sure.
the problems maybe that are sitting between solar and electric and smart homes and batteries being interconnected and providing the maximum amount of power, and just take us maybe from a 13-year-old's perspective of what that huge, big, badass 800-pound gorilla problem is and how you're going to fix it.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much. So I think first off, so who are we at CZAR-Power? What are we trying to do? So our goal is energy independence for every American and then everyone on the planet.
Boom.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We want to democratize
show's over.
Energy in the United
We're
States.
done.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we're here to do. And we're not going to take any prisoners. So what we're doing is we're combining several different, now they're trendy topics, right? But when we started this, when myself and the co-founder started this, 5 to 7 years ago, this was the Wild West, right? So a lot of things, and it's crazy, right? When I talk to people about, hey, Tesla, people weren't really sure. People actually were pretty sure Tesla was just going to be a fad.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to go out of business, probably fake, right? A bunch of things, you tell somebody that today and they kind of look at you strange, but that was absolutely some of the early days struggle that we had to go through at CZAR. So we're developing a device. We're pretty close, right? We're in the 5-yard line of finishing up the development of this device that combines a few things that are crucial to this clean energy transition. So in a nutshell, it's solar, it's electric vehicle charging, and it's connecting to stationary storage, so like a home or office battery. And I can unpack those things a little bit for you.
And why is that a problem, by the way? Why doesn't that already exist? Because I think a lot of Americans and people around the world would believe what surely that's what's happening right now, because I'm plugging in my car in this place and I've got my solar here, and it would seem that the infrastructure is kind of already there.
Yeah, so there are many answers to that. So part of this, and you said it in your intro, so much of life, so much of entrepreneurship and business is about timing. And the timing is for all of this is really incredible. The technological advancements that have happened with those three sectors over the last, we're not talking decades, we're talking like last years or months, is really incredible. So there's many different answers to that question. One of them is, there's a lot of siloed solutions, right? So people kind of not seeing the whole forest, just kind of focusing on a tree. And then again, this other aspect of, the technology wasn't there. And I'll give you an example. So it took about 40 years for a million solar installations to happen in the United States, right? All the way up to 2016. 40 years. By 2019, 3 years later, there was another million.
Wow.
Right? So 0 to 1 million took 40 years. 1 to 2 took 3.
Wow.
And if you believe folks, we're not talking about like, hippies are us. We're talking about like Bloomberg Energy Finance Guide. And by 2024, so 3 years from now, there'll be up to 4 million new solar installations. So double the amount of solar being put on homes and businesses than have ever been put on in the entire history of the United States. So when we're talking about timing, this is really where, it goes bonkers, right? And a part of that is that the price of solar has dropped 99% in those 40 years. Really almost half the cost of solar, 45% drop in the last 5 years, right? So all of this has been really recent, or this opportunity has been very recent. But it's not going to go anywhere, right? So Pew Research did a study where it's about half homeowners seriously considered installing solar on their own homes. That's not going to go anywhere, right? If you figure like the average age of a homeowner is somewhere around 54, 55 years old, as more millennials own homes and as kind of Gen Xers started, the motivations for clean tech, clean energy, energy independence, energy resiliency is only going to
continue
increase.
to grow.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The other kind of aspect to this, and the other thing that our device is working is fast charging of electric vehicles, both at home and in your business. So everyone knows the apex predator of the EV game, right? It is Tesla, right? But what's so exciting about this whole industry is, General Motors came out and said, hey, by 2035, we're going to have all electric vehicles, right? General Motors considers themselves on the path to be an electric vehicle company.
Well, Joe Biden just declared that all of their vehicles were going to be electric.
All government, yes.
Today.
His pushes that all government vehicles are electric. And look, Brian, climate plays a role in this, but why GM and why this makes so much sense for so many people has actually nothing to do with, saving the ice caps or saving the polar bears, right? It's a dollar and cents issue with electric vehicles versus internal combustion engine vehicles. I think probably the best company that I've seen out there, the best EV company that does this is Lordstown Motors out of Lordstown, Ohio. I'm a Northeast Ohio boy myself. So been loving what they do. And when you go on their website, they make an electric pickup truck, or they have 100,000 pre-orders. And they do a Lordstown Endurance is their pickup truck. And they do a head-to-head comparison, just smack you right in the face. Head-to-head comparison with a Ford F-150. And it takes you through the cost to own from everything, the purchase price, when you add maintenance, when you add fuel, what does that actually cost to own? In 5 years, you're almost at $20,000 more to own and operate that F-150, right? Wow. Now expand that out to fleets of hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of vehicles. And you can kind of see where the electrification of transportation is not a fad. And it honestly has less to do with the environment than just a great personal and business decision. That genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back in, right? Another component of this with the electrification of transportation is the American Lung Association said, if we can electrify all cars in the United States by 2040, we'll save something like $70+ billion of healthcare costs, save like 6,000 lives. So like, again, this air quality piece is essential here. Everyone talks about CO2 in the atmosphere and the climate change. But carbon monoxide, right, in the atmosphere, it has tremendous health
and look,
issues.
It's a straight line. It's a straight line discussion. It's the same as secondhand smoke. If
That's
your mom
exactly
and dad are smoking in your house, right?
That's exactly right.
You can argue it if you have the odd car outside,
Yes.
and you'd be like, okay, it's tiny. But when you have literally something like LA, where we have the 405, which is just a continuous spread, like all it does all day is just spew out carbon dioxide for all day, all night. So.
Sure.
It's a no-brainer. Like
it's a no-brainer.
So moving to clean, we got it. What I want to get to is, and even the problem we have even moving to clean, I think we have it as well, because there just aren't enough installations. There isn't enough self-sufficient power. There isn't enough energy to go around. We're going to have to tear down all the gas stations and put up all of the electric ones. So where does CZAR-Power come in? And what was that niche, that area that you saw and you said, we got it?
Yeah, great question. So as solar prices dropping and installations happening and electric vehicles and battery technology, both battery technologies for electric vehicles and for stationary storage, like home battery, power wall type setups are going on, concurrently, there's a monumental struggle right now with how are we going to deal with this clean energy transition, right? And not to kind of oversimplify things or create a false dichotomy, but there's essentially two schools of thought. One is the macro, and the macro view to how we're going to solve this problem is, mandate utility companies, overbuild solar, push, we're talking trillions of dollars of massive infrastructure overhauls, changing out transmission lines, high power lines, injecting stationary storage like grid storage batteries into the system, all of the regulatory food fight that has to go on with utilities and government and how that's all gonna play out. Some, as far as I'm concerned, maybe even some draconian measures that utility companies might do, smart metering, which will enable a bureaucrat in a room somewhere in a utility to turn on or off your air conditioning or heating as he or she sees fit. Again, in order to try to control this system, because the grid's broken. It's 100 years old. With the deferred maintenance on so much of it, and it was never built or designed to do what we're asking it to do for just living, much less what happens when electric vehicles, again, not because they're environmentally friendly, but because they just make all of the sense. They're safer, they're cheaper, faster acceleration, they're sexier. What happens when, you go home, when your home becomes your gas station? Because right now, we stress the grid out, just kind of providing for our daily needs in general. And then we go somewhere else. That somewhere else is called a gas station for energy with our cars. What happens when all of that comes home, literally? Comes home? The grid can't handle it, but there's a lot of work being done to help with that, right? So that's the macro view. That's one school of thought. And then you have this other school of thought that takes like the micro or nano or individual approach to this, which is, hey, for too long, we have allowed other people to make decisions about our energy, how it's created, how it's distributed. And it's time to take that power, literally take that power back, right? And it's thinking about energy as a right, thinking about energy as, a way that we can really transform society if an individual takes the lion's share of responsibility for energy generation via solar or storage or transmission, and then, maybe or maybe not uses the grid to supplement that energy, right? So primary is the individual, secondary, if needed, is relying on the grid infrastructure. Because look, there's don't get me wrong, like we have energy in the United States is so cheap, and it's the reason that we've been able to become such a global powerhouse. So all the folks in the utilities, everyone working in that entire ecosystem, are really heroes and responsible for getting the United States to where it is now. But where are we going, right? And how do we do this? And if you see the price continues to drop and the technology just continues to get better and better in all of these related fields, the reason that you should do this, again, one of my motivations is, regardless of what you think about the climate, the reason that you should transition to taking responsibility for your own power, climate shouldn't even be in like your top 2 or 3, right? You should do it because it makes financial sense. You should do it because you can inject resiliency into the system, whether it's, natural disasters or what have you. That's the reason why you should kind of hop on this system and kind of ride it into the future, because it's a wild world right now.
And I'm entirely convinced. So then how is what CZAR-Power doing making that self-sufficient system more efficient? Because that was what got me, right? It was like, again, each piece of this argument, nobody's going to fight with. Like, everybody's going to follow you all the way through with this. And now everybody's thinking, okay, great. But CZAR-Power are adding what part of it? Because there must be a slight problem with that self-sufficient grid that's not going to be possible without bringing CZAR-Power is. What is that?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, if you want to install solar on your house, solar uses a different type of electricity than you can push through your grid, right? Without getting too technical, it's the DC AC conversion. So if Brian wants to install solar on your house, you've got a solar panels on your roof. It goes down into a power inverter, and that gets pushed to the grid. That's a separate device. Then you've got the electric vehicle charger that comes with your electric vehicle. And so one of the early pain points with electric vehicle adoption was the slow, kind of the drip charge time, which caused a lot of anxiety in potential buyers. So what we've been able to do is, at its core, is kind of merge these two things. And I think that accomplishes a couple things. First, when you talk about environmentally friendly or air quality, again, whatever hill you want to die on, dropping your internal combustion engine car, going to an EV, and then using coal burning power plant to provide your energy for your car, right, isn't the logically the greatest jump, right? So one of the early things that we wanted to solve at CZAR was, hey, why the inefficiency? Why is the solar going to the grid separate, where you lose control over it? And then we're taking grid energy, which who the hell knows where your energy's, how many electrons there are fossil fuels or renewable based, and you're charging your electric vehicle with that, and slowly, right? So we can DC fast charge your electric vehicle, again, in a residential application or a commercial application, so that you can charge your vehicle, depending on the charger that you have, 2 to 5 times faster than what comes with your EV.
Which is ridiculous.
Which is awesome, right?
Which is awesome. I mean, that's it. We could just have like the banner of the podcast and just take this 5 or 10 seconds and say, here's the podcast. That's it. That's the mic drop right there.
And you can do it using 100% solar if you have that much on your house. And when you're not using solar to charge your EV, you can pump it through our box back into the grid and make money off of it.
And sell
pump it through our box to a home battery, store it for use later, right? When either you want to sell back at peak hours to the utility company, or charge at non-peak hours, you can do that, right? Because the awkward thing about solar for so long was peak energy usage happens when everyone gets up, gets ready to go to work, and then really spikes when everyone comes home from work and eats dinner and watches TV and goes to bed. The awkward thing about solar is it's in the middle. It hits its peak hours right in the middle. So having a battery pack associated with this really changes the game for solar. And again, our box, if you will, you can do all of it, right? It'll invert your solar. You can charge your electric vehicle 2 to 5 times faster. You can push your energy back to the grid and make money. You can push it to a battery if you have it. And it all works together, all kind of seamlessly works together.
I get excited every single time you say it. And for me now, I'm so used to talking about it that I see the future looking like this. I actually can't see a future that doesn't look like this because I'm not quite sure how they could do it. And what's incredible, and I think most people will be looking at today and saying, how come some of the big players have struggled with this part of it for so long, and CZAR-Power have nimbly come in like a fast speedboat and then provided this technology, and how close are we to deployment in market? And I think you're going to say about the bigger players is they haven't been focused on it up until now. They've been focused on actually trying to get their core little parts put together, which has allowed you this huge gulf to be able to come to market. But maybe talk a little bit about that and then what our go-to-market looks like.
Yeah, so first off, we'll use the 800-pound gorilla Tesla as probably the best example. So years ahead of their time with electric vehicles, all of the headache associated with actually doing electric, like sexy electric vehicles on scale. They also, and this is not talked about, I think, enough, is they also have a solar installation part of Tesla, and also a stationary storage, a battery, the Powerwall, as a part of Tesla. So a company as awesome and as wealthy and powerful as Tesla, only relatively recently, I'm talking like a matter of weeks ago, said they're actually going to do their own solar inverters. So they're going to make them in-house, right? So, a company that's so focused on so many different things, right? Because everybody has their piece of the puzzle, and they're trying to do a great job at whatever their piece is, right? But what we saw, again, now about 7 years ago, and then 5 years ago, started the business around, is that, hey, if this turns out how we think this is going to turn out, and the adoption of all of these things and the dominoes start to fall, someone needs to think about how you take all of these clean technologies and kind of put them together literally in one box to help fuel this transition.
And that's exactly what you have done, are doing. And now let's talk about the deployment, because what you have is huge. It's just huge. So now it's a race, right? It's a speed race. You're in your speedboat. It's the fastest speedboat in the world. You got a cigarette boat and you're going for it. So how do you make that happen? What do we need to make sure that we get you through the final pieces of testing and then to deployment by summer?
Yeah, so I think the best example when you're talking about speed and the difference, about 7 years ago, Nelson, my co-founder, and I flew out to California to meet with an electric motorcycle company. And we were literally laughed out of the room by their CEO. Like, who are these kids? What do they think they're doing? None of this will ever happen. I don't think that they can do what they say they can do. This is ridiculous. Get out of my office type of thing. That happened 7 years ago. Today, everyone in their brother is either starting or funding something that has to do with clean tech, right? So to your point about speed, it is all about speed. Because somebody can turn on $1 billion and you can hire a lot of engineers and make up the 7 years that we've been bootstrapping this pretty quickly. Fortunately for us, we're really close. So we've gone through 3 versions. We've tested the hell out of it. We've actually over-engineered it to a good degree because things like quality and safety really matter to us, both on a professional and on a personal level.
Yeah, well done.
So where are we this summer? As part of a partnership and project with the state of Massachusetts, we will charge an electric vehicle using solar in Boston in real time. That's happening this summer. So from a project development perspective, really the next step is we need to gain UL certification to make sure, to have an external entity say, hey, this is really safe and this will work, and kind of torture test it. And then we'll do any kind of slight tweaks that we need to do based on that feedback. And then we're off to the races. Then it's time to sell and mass produce this and to get this in as many homes or businesses as possible.
Beautiful. And then so to get the UL testing done, first of all, we just require a small amount of money, right? Probably $1 million or so.
Yeah. Honestly, probably less. Yes.
Incredible. And then for mass deployment. And by the way, when we're talking about mass deployment, I want people just to look at the scale of what's happening within Tesla right now and just imagine how many contracts are out there. It's honestly, it's not in the millions, it's in the hundreds of millions. And even that is a relatively conservative estimates as to what could potentially happen here. You just have to imagine every single, and we say Americans, but it's really global citizens.
That's
right?
exactly right, Brian.
Yeah.
That's
you
exactly
have to imagine
right.
everybody in the world and say, would we prefer if it was cost efficient and if it was more, I even think convenience is such a huge factor as well. If you tell me that I can have my house absolutely anywhere and I can have my own power, and based on what I use and what I don't use, I can resell it, I can keep it, I can store it, and I can make sure that I have maximum efficiency between all of the different utilities of that power, yes. Like, I'll take it straight away. And if we have a government that's massively aligned with this way of thinking, then we're going to have payment plans so that the capital infrastructure to put this thing in place in the beginning is going to be covered over a period of time. Like, this is just the time for all of this. So what do we need to do today? You have, by the way, the one thing we haven't covered here, which I think we should cover quickly before we go to how do we get this thing over the line this summer, is talk a little bit about the team, because you have an incredible team.
I'm blessed, Brian. I am so blessed. I enjoy being the dumbest person in the room whenever we have team meetings, because the people that are on this team are phenomenal. They're phenomenal human beings. They're great characters, absolutely brilliant and sharp. So first, Nelson Wang, my co-founder, born in China, came to the United States, studied in Flint, Michigan at Kettering University, then went to the community college known as Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in Boston.
That's a small one.
Small, no-name college. And that's where we've done a lot of this collaboration. So electrical engineer, really CZAR started wrapped around his thesis project for, hey, I think I can do this. Maybe or maybe not, there might be a business case there. So that's Nelson. Then we have Alan. Alan is the guy in the trenches on the day-to-day, also an electrical engineer, phenomenal human being. I pester him all the time. I tell him I should pay him for counseling sessions, because I'll call him at random times on the weekend, throw an idea at him, and he does a really good job of like, okay, all right, just kind of letting it marinate a little bit. But phenomenal human being in Flint right now at Kettering, helping design this. We're on version 3 of this, and he'll be the one championing this through the finish line, again, on the day-to-day work. Then we've got Mo. You've met Mo.
Yeah,
Mo
branding
is
genius.
Mo is phenomenal. So, Nigerian by way of Minnesota, and really just a phenomenal human being. So what Mo did, so I, business undergrad, Ohio boy, then I got a master's in geological engineering. And then you've got the other two electrical engineers, like big level, high brain, 500-pound brain electrical engineers. So the company was engineer and masculine, right? And with definitely like a plus up on the engineer part. So one of the greatest things about Mo was she came in and she humanized CZAR in a tremendously short amount of time. Kind of, let's cut through all of the engineering, sciencey jargon, and kind of talking over people's heads and kind of talking about things that don't really matter. And let's kind of, all of that stuff's important, but like, let's kind of initially, like, let's just kind of connect on a human level. And that's something that Mo has really done for this team and has done a phenomenal job.
It's a great point. I never actually thought about that before. And also, you haven't mentioned your military background, which of course everybody's going to be very grateful for. But it also is something that investors love in startups, because that military precision is tremendously important. But I never thought about the over masculinity in building something within clean energy. But actually what Tesla did incredibly well was they made clean energy very sexy. Like they made it very fun and very it almost had a personality, while prior to that it was a tank. right? People would bring it in and say, who cares what it looks like because it functions in this way. And what Tesla said was, actually, no, Apple proved this point out.
Exactly.
If you provide something which is beautiful and functional at the same time, then actually the money part of it becomes even less important. And I think that's where we're going with CZAR-Power. So yeah, so it's a huge team. It's a monster problem, which is not being fixed by anyone today. It is a core team focusing on nothing else other than this problem. The only two steps that are left to go is, number one, the UL process, which has to happen right now. So we're going to do a raise of $1 million for. And then as soon as that gets finished, which should be pretty short stop, then we're going to go immediately for deployment and immediately for large contractual sales, which you're already working on 2 or 3 companies for MOUs for. So to finish us off in the podcast here and tell us what the world, if we can have, and by the way, add anything else in that you like as well. But obviously everybody will want to have your email so they can connect with you. They already know they can always catch me at brian@expertdojo.com and I will loop you into the conversation. But give them your email, the URL so they can get that as well. And then a forward-facing look of a world with CZAR-Power central to it in 5 years' time. What does that world look like?
Yeah. So first, Anthony, ANTHONY .Frisone, FRISONE @czarpower.com. CZAR, CZAR, which stands for Carbon Zero Advanced Research, power.com. That's website and email.
Perfect.
5 years.
5-year vision.
5-year vision for CZAR-Power is we enable not just Americans, but anyone in the world, anyone in China, anyone in Europe, anyone in sub-Saharan Africa or South America, to be able to participate in the clean energy revolution while simultaneously taking charge of their energy in a way that has never happened before. We want to touch as many people as possible, as many people who are interested and kind of standing on their own 2 feet, wrestling some of the power back from these entrenched interests, and really just creating a smarter, safer, and more sustainable world. And anyone who's about that, anyone who thinks that's a desired future, contact me. I'd love to talk.
It's huge. And you always inspire me whenever I'm thinking. Even when you're talking there, I have this vision of a global citizen walking around with their choice of briefcase, and their briefcase is a power briefcase, right? And it's a CZAR-Power briefcase. And inside that briefcase, they have all of the power that they would possibly need for absolutely anything that they could ever want, whether it's for their summer house, whether it's for their home, whether it's for the car, whether it's anything. Like, you provide them that box of convenience where power will always be with us wherever we go to.
Yeah. So, obviously I'm extremely passionate about energy in the United States and energy independence and democratizing energy. But if I can be really honest, what excites me the most is after we solve this problem, and we will, in the United States, looking out on other kind of first world countries, Europe, Western Europe, China, there's a huge demand there, and we've actually made some inroads there. But what really interests me, and Mo,
you're going to say Africa. Come on. You can just get rid of this suspense. You're going to say Africa. You're going to say the fastest growing middle class in the world. You're going to say what's going to be the the fastest growing economy and the largest by number of people economy on the planet in 10 years' time. You're going to say the place that everybody's looking at right now, but they need this massively.
Yes. And here's the thing, right? Yes, there's a humanitarian element to this, undoubtedly. And a climate element, kind of a climate justice element to this as well. But what excites me so much about looking at Africa is we will do what the continent has done with telecommunications with energy, right? Yeah. So they, and this, right? But there was no growing pains, like Morse code, and then we're going to lay a bunch, millions of miles of,
They bypassed
telephone line. They bypassed it all. It's all cell phones, right? They leapfrogged that technology
to cellular.
What's going to happen now to a place, a village that doesn't have a grid? Well, does that mean they're going to install a grid? That doesn't mean they're going to install coal burning power plants? No, it doesn't.
No.
It means they're going to do microgrids or nanogrids in individual houses with solar through a CZAR box. Charging in their electric vehicle is what's going to be the future.
And now
That's what I'm excited about.
Now you've moved beyond purpose. Now you've moved to legacy, baby. That's legacy. That's a beautiful thing. Tony, I love what you're doing. I love you. I love your team. I love the fact that we're a part of it, and we're going to be able to invest more and more in the future. This for me is a really big deal. We're with you all the way. And listen, you and me are going to continue in like 5 minutes on a Google link to build some more stuff that we can get out to investors. So like, who's pretending what? But let's just build this thing. Let's make it huge. Let's make 2021 the biggest year there's ever been for clean power, because CZAR-Power come to the game.
Awesome, Brian. I appreciate you.
All right, brother, you too. That's a wrap.